Ever get that feeling about a place? Like you could just sense the history and the potential.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Jharkhand, well, it's definitely got that. It's the land of forests. It's carved out of Bihar back in 2000. Rich in natural resources, super vibrant tribal culture. It plays a huge part in India's industries, too.
Really fascinating place.
We've got some amazing material to dig into today and this deep dive. We're going to unpack the most interesting points of Jharkhand. We want to make sure you walk away really understanding this state.
It's about going beyond just the basics, getting to the heart of it, the history, the geography, the people, their traditions, the resources, and how it's all developing. It's a pretty interesting story.
Right. So let's get started with those historical roots. Jharkhand, it might be a relatively new state, but its history goes way back, right?
Oh, absolutely. It wasn't just, suddenly created.
It has a past.
Yeah, a deep past. It's been home to a lot of different communities for centuries, mostly tribal groups.
Hmm.
And it's been a part of those big Indian empires you read about, like the Magadha, Mauryan, Gupta empires. Even the Mughals had influence there. But what's really striking is the resistance that grew, especially when the British were around.
Those names,
Yeah.
Birsa Munda, Sidho-Kanho, Tilka Manjhi, it's like they're more than just historical figures, right?
For sure.
They represent whole movements against being
Yep.
taken advantage of. It's a story of people fighting to protect their land, their way of life.
Exactly. Take Birsa Munda. He's a legendary figure, a tribal freedom fighter who led a powerful rebellion against the British in the late 19th century. His idea of Ogalan, the Great Tumult, it wasn't just a revolt. It was about tribal independence, rejecting how the British owned land. And that idea, it still has an impact today, especially with land rights issues. Then you have the Santhal Hull, led by Sidho-Kanho, also in the 19th century. That was a massive uprising against unfair taxes.
A lot of unrest.
Yeah, and this desire for self-determination, it didn't go away after India became independent. There was still a feeling of being pushed aside, exploited by Bihar, economically. That really drove the push for a separate state. So when Jharkhand was finally formed on November 15th, 2000, it wasn't just a political move. Choosing that date, Birsa Munda's birthday, it was super symbolic. It honored that long history of tribal resistance.
That connection to Birsa Munda's birthday, yeah, it adds so much weight to that date. Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Let's talk about the actual land itself. 79,714 square kilometers. That's a pretty decent chunk of eastern India. It shares borders with a bunch of states, right?
It does. It borders Bihar to the north, West Bengal to the east, Odisha down south, Chhattisgarh to the west, and even touches a little bit of Uttar Pradesh up in the northwest. You mentioned that hilly, forested terrain. That's not just for looks, it's super important for keeping the area biodiverse.
Right, when you think of Jharkhand, you've got to picture those rolling hills, those thick forests. And then there's the Chotanagpur Plateau. It's like the backbone of the state, geologically
Yeah.
speaking, right?
It is. It covers most of Jharkhand. And it's important because that's where most of the minerals are. And then you have the rivers, like the Damodar. It's practically famous for the coal you find in that area. So all this geography, it really impacts Jharkhand's economy, especially when you look at its resources. And it's rich, especially with minerals.
So the rivers, they're not just water. They're tied to the economy like veins carrying all those resources. But it's not all industry, is it? There's a lot of natural beauty, too, like Betla National Park.
Oh, yeah. Betla's a huge deal. It's a wildlife sanctuary. Tigers, elephants, tons of animals.
Right.
It shows just how ecologically important the state is. And then there's Netorhat, called the Queen of Chotanagpur.
Such a cool name.
Yeah, it really makes you want to see it. It's known for being absolutely stunning, like a hill station escape, cooler and beautiful.
I like that contrast. The industrial areas and these peaceful natural spots. And the climate is tropical monsoon, right? Hot summers, good rainfall, and comfy winters. Sounds like a good mix for agriculture, along with all the mining.
It is. The average rainfall, something like 1,100 to 1,400 millimeters. It's great for growing crops like rice, maize, wheat, pulses. Those are still important for a lot of people in rural areas, their livelihoods.
Makes sense. Okay, let's talk about the mineral wealth.
Yeah.
Jharkhand is always called mineral rich, and the science backs that up.
It definitely does. Jharkhand is like a major force in India's mining industry. It has some of the biggest reserves of all these crucial minerals, stuff that India needs to grow its industries.
Coal being a big one, right?
Yeah.
I always hear about those massive coal fields in Jharkhand.
You bet. The state has huge coal reserves, essential for power across the country. Historically, they've shaped labor movements, and even now, as we move towards renewable energy, they're still vital for India's energy security. Then there's iron ore, found in massive amounts, especially in the Singvam region. That's been crucial for India's steel industry, which is huge.
And it's not just coal and iron ore. There's copper and even uranium.
That's right. Jharkhand has a lot of copper, which is important for manufacturing and infrastructure. And the uranium from Jaduguda, that's strategically important for India's nuclear power program. Oh, and we can't forget mica and bauxite. Those are raw materials for tons of industries, from electronics to making aluminum.
It's like a treasure chest of minerals underground. And all that wealth, it's led to some big-name industries. Tata Steel in Jamshedpur, for example.
Oh, yeah. Tata Steel was one of the first big industrial projects in India. It's still a major player in the steel world. Then there's the Bokaro steel plant, another giant. These places are located where they are and are as successful as they are because they have such easy access to iron ore and coal right there.
And Dhanbad, the coal capital of India,
Yeah.
that's where Coal India Limited is, really showing how important coal mining is to the state's economy. And then there's the Heavy Engineering Corporation, HEC, in Ranchi. That suggests they're not just focused on mining and steel.
Right. HEC shows that the state can handle heavy manufacturing and engineering, and of course, all this industrial activity. It needs a ton of power. So the Jharkhand has big thermal and hydroelectric power plants all over. It's like a chain reaction. Resources, industries, power, it's all connected.
You can't have one without the others. But a state's not just its resources, right? It's the people.
Mm.
And Jharkhand has a pretty unique population with a big tribal presence.
That's key to understanding Jharkhand. About 26% of the people there belong to scheduled tribes. It's one of the states with the most tribal communities in all of India. This really shapes the culture, society, even politics.
And there are a lot of different tribal groups, right?
Mhm.
Santhal, Munda, Oran, Ho, Korea, Paharia. Each one has its own history and traditions.
Exactly. Each of these groups, and the smaller ones too, they have their own customs, languages, ways of organizing themselves. It all adds up to this super rich cultural mix. And it's expressed in their festivals, their celebrations.
Like Sarhul, right? It's about nature, trees. It sounds very connected to the environment, respecting it.
It is. Sarhul celebrates spring. It's when the sal trees bloom, which are really important to them culturally. It shows that deep connection between the tribal people and the world around them. Then you have Karma, a harvest festival celebrating the land's bounty, and Tusu Parab, a really unique rural celebration with its own rituals and vibrancy.
And Makar Sankranti, a festival celebrated all over India. I bet it has its own special flavor in Jharkhand.
Oh, yeah. It's all about community, sharing the harvest, and showing off their culture through music and dance. Speaking of dance, the tribal dance forms like Chao Paika, Santali dance, they're super important to Jharkhand. They tell stories, keep history alive, pass on traditions through movement and music.
It's amazing how much culture there is. And the languages spoken in Jharkhand also reflect that diversity. Hindi is the official language, but you hear a lot of tribal languages, especially out in the rural areas.
Absolutely. Hindi is used by the government and for communication in general. But languages like Santali, Mundari, Ho, Kuruk, Nagpuri, they're spoken a lot, especially where the tribal communities are. It's another thing that makes Jharkhand unique.
Let's talk about the future now. Education's a big deal for progress, right? And Jharkhand has some really good educational institutions.
Yeah, it does. Places like the Indian Institute of Technology, the one in Dhanbad, ISM Dhanbad as it's called, the Xavier Labor Relations Institute, XLRI in Jamshedpur, Birla Institute of Technology, BIT Mesra, and Ranchi University, which has been around for a while. All those show that there's a solid base for higher education and important research there.
But the literacy rate in Jharkhand is still lower than the national average. That shows there's still work to be done, especially in rural areas.
That's a huge point. While those big institutions are great, getting everyone, especially in those far-out rural areas, up to speed with literacy is so important. Making sure that everyone has access to education, that's how you make sure everyone grows and develops.
And beyond education and industry, Jharkhand seems to have a lot to offer when it comes to tourism. There's the natural beauty and the historical and religious sites.
For sure. Jharkhand's landscape is perfect for tourism. Betla National Park, with its wildlife, it's a big draw for people who love nature. Then you have those incredible waterfalls like Hundru Falls, Dasam Falls. They're beautiful.
Hundru Falls, that's one of the tallest waterfalls in India. It's got to be a sight to see. And Dasam Falls is close to Ranchi, so it's easy to get to, both for locals and tourists.
You're right. They're a great escape. You get to experience the natural beauty of the state. And it's not just nature. Jharkhand has important religious sites, too, like Parasnath Hills. It's a big pilgrimage site for Jains. And Deoghar, home to the famous Baidyanath Dam, a Hindu shrine. People come from all over to visit that.
So there's something for everyone, from adventure seekers to those on a spiritual journey. And we can't forget Netterhat, the Queen of Chattanagadpur. It's got that hill station vibe, nice and cool. It sounds like a state with a lot to offer different kinds of travelers.
It really is. The untouched forests and all the waterfalls, they really attract people who want to see natural beauty, find some peace, or even get a little adventurous.
Okay, let's talk about how the state is run. It's a unicameral legislature, right, the Vidhan Sabha, with 81 seats. And then there's its representation in the national parliament. Just to clarify for anyone listening, a unicameral legislature means there's just one chamber, one house.
That's it. Jharkhand sends 14 people to the Lok Sabha, that's the lower house of India's parliament, and 6 to the Rajya Sabha, which is the upper house. That way, the state has a voice. Its needs are heard when laws and policies are being made.
Politically, things seem to have been pretty dynamic in Jharkhand, maybe even a little chaotic at times. There are a few key players that always seem to be in the mix.
The main political parties in Jharkhand are the Jharkhand Mukti Morcha, or GMM. They've historically been the voice for the tribal communities. Then there's the Bharatiya Janata Party, BJP, the Indian National Congress, INC, and the All Jharkhand Students' Union Party, AJSU Party. That's another big regional group. The state has gone through times of political instability. That can make it hard to govern effectively and consistently.
And when you talk about the challenges Jharkhand faces, you hear about things like Naxalism, corruption, and unemployment. These are big, ongoing issues. Let's talk about Naxalism for a minute. What are some of the things that cause it, the social and economic factors?
It's sad, but some parts of Jharkhand are dealing with left-wing extremism, what we call Naxalism. It's complicated, it goes deep. It's about inequality, like people losing their land, not having jobs, feeling like they don't matter. It makes things unstable and hurts development. Unemployment is a huge problem, even though the state has so many resources, especially for young people. And like a lot of places in India, Jharkhand has a problem with corruption that can stop development programs and resources from getting to the people who need them.
And with so many people living in rural areas and tribal communities, making sure they have good health care must be a big challenge. Plus, you can't ignore the environmental impact of all that mining.
No, you're absolutely right. Making sure everyone has access to quality health care, especially in those remote, hard-to-reach areas, it's essential, and it's an ongoing effort. And yeah, all that mining, it's helped the economy, but it's also hurt the environment. Deforestation, land degradation, pollution, the whole deal. So managing those resources responsibly and sustainably is really important.
Looking ahead, what are the big things that Jharkhand is focusing on for its future?
The plan seems to be to do a bunch of things. They want to help industries grow, not just mining, but smaller and medium businesses too. That way, more people have jobs and the economy is more diverse. They're also big on skill development programs. So young people have the skills they need for the new jobs. Improving infrastructure is huge too. Roads, railways, internet access, that helps the economy, improves quality of life, connects those remote areas. And there's a big push for renewable energy, solar, and hydropower. They're trying to grow in a sustainable way, being mindful of the environment.
It sounds like they're trying to cover all the bases, to tackle the challenges and use the state's potential to its fullest. So as we wrap up this deep dive into Jharkhand, what are the big things that stick out to you?
We saw how Jharkhand's creation came out of this long fight for tribal rights, their desire to decide their own future. The state's identity, it's tied to its natural resources, they've powered industries all over India, but they also come with a responsibility to protect the environment. Jharkhand's tribal culture, its diverse population, those are what make it special. And while it has some great universities, getting literacy up, especially in rural areas, that's a must-do for everyone to benefit. We talked about tourism, how Jharkhand's got natural beauty and cultural attractions, and we can't forget its complex political scene and the challenges it's working to overcome.
It sounds like a state that's full of potential. If it keeps focusing on good government, investing wisely, and improving its infrastructure, Jharkhand has a really bright future ahead.
I think so too. And as we finished up, maybe the question to think about is this. How can Jharkhand keep growing, using its resources, but do it in a way that doesn't damage its environment and culture for the future? What role will this resource-rich state play in India's future, both economically and environmentally? It's something to consider.